welcome to another episode of the Mindset Athlete Podcast, and I'm your host, James Roberts. And on today's show, I've got Stuart Robinson, MBE. Stuart was on his fourth tour of Afghanistan when he was injured by an improvised explosive, an IED. He was introduced to wheelchair rugby in 2014 during his rehabilitation and invited to try out for the Invictus Games being held in London, where he came away with the gold medal. Following this, Stuart became part of wheelchair GBWR talent development squad and was selected to join ParalympicsGB in the inspirational program for Rio 2016. Stuart went on to captain UK team for the Invictus Games in Orlando in 2016 and also in Toronto 2017, where he won a further bronze and silver medal. He was then invited to the GB Elite Squad training in November 2016 and became part of the squad who successfully retained their European Championship title in 2017 and 2019. So welcome onto the show, Stuart.
Thanks, James. Thank you.
So obviously we've alluded to the most recent accolade. Obviously you've come home from only just last year of bringing home GB's first wheelchair rugby gold medal.
Yeah.
How would you describe your journey from obviously being an ex-service member to obviously now being MBE gold medalist? Pretty much you've acquired a lot of sporting success in a quite short period of time.
The only real way you can describe it is it's been a bit of a whirlwind. Literally, I kind of ever since I was injured and I took up wheelchair rugby, it's been a bit of a snowball. It's obviously grown and grown and grown. I think I'd never expected it to get as big as it did, but I think even since day one, all I wanted to do is go out and play sport and get active and get healthy again. But I think having that competitive spirit and that edge to go out and want to win kind of was always within me. And it was obviously only when I kind of felt that I'd found the sport that I really loved that it kind of really took off. I mean, it's been, again, a bit of a whirlwind through the Invictus Games and given me the platform to be able to kickstart my sporting career. And I think being selected for Great Britain was obviously always the goal, and to go on and compete at Paralympic Games while I still had the opportunity. And I think obviously Tokyo was probably one of the biggest highlights of not only my sporting career but my life. And to come away with the gold medal at my first ever games was an unbelievable achievement. And fingers crossed we can carry on pushing forward and continue that success with the squad that we've got.
And then also I was reading on your Twitter, so I've done a little bit of a deep dive. You were named MVP alongside, and I don't want to not mention him as well, Jonathan Coggins, to the Europeans MVP. Well, I'll call it a guard of honor. But what? Obviously, you've got the gold medal in your first Paralympics, to then obviously be named obviously by your peers as one of the best players at Europeans not long after. What's left on the table then, Stuart?
Well, I think I've always had this competitive edge that I want to keep pushing forward and be the best player that I can be. And I think obviously starting my sporting career at a relatively later stage than say the normal athletes, that for me it's always been trying to be as best that I can and go out and train every day, and you want to be the best player that you can be. And I think obviously receiving that at the Euros was a pretty welcome achievement, but it's not something that I kind of rest my laurels on. It's something that I kind of want to keep pushing forward to. And obviously Europe's only part of the world, and obviously we've got the World Championships coming up in October time, so not just for me but I think for the rest of the squad it'd be a great opportunity to go out there and show the turnaround that we've had since Tokyo, and the way that we're now pushing forward and all eyes on in Paris in a couple of years time. So yeah.
So what's it like now? Because obviously you've now got, as a squad, a target on your back.
Yeah, I think obviously we were always the underdogs for Tokyo, and the fact that nobody kind of expected us to do so well, and we've always been had this label of like the nearly men, or the never quite reaching the medal stages. But for us to blow that out of the water and come away with a gold medal in Tokyo, now it's kind of put us in the forefront of everybody's minds, so that every tournament we go to, everybody wants to beat us, and you saw that with over in Paris and European Championships, that every nation kind of wanted to play us, but they also wanted the opportunity to, albeit not maybe be the win, but sometimes just even the little wins for them, like getting a turnover or making a certain player make a mistake, or things like that. And it's a different kind of pressure than we're used to, but I think it's one that now we're going to have to get used to, because the gold medals only put us at the forefront of everybody's minds, and the opportunity to come out and play against us. But I think that the sooner that we relish this opportunity to have these teams that want to play against us, and want to try and play the best, can only improve us as a team, as a squad, and try and get us playing better towards the future competitions that we've got coming up.
Does the number 3 for you, Stuart, is more curiosity for me than anything. Does it have a superstition for you? As in, does it have a meaning to you that you wanted that have that specific number?
I think when I first started, we were just given a random number for now, but when they kind of made it more a permanent thing, that you get to choose your number, that for me, 3 has always been a kind of a lucky number. When I was growing up, obviously a lot of things happened in threes and stuff like that, but whilst I was also serving in the military, I was on a squadron called 3 Squadron that was over in Northern Ireland, so it made kind of sense just to stick with that number, and to keep moving it forward, and wear that number with pride, you know.
So for you, it's got a deeper meaning, other than just being given a simple number, because obviously I played team sports at the back end of my Paralympic career, and nobody's ever asked me this, was why that's my social media handles end with the number 11. I think the significance for me, I don't sound Welsh, but obviously I'm a quarter Welsh. Our team manager was a diehard Manchester United fan, so I got given the 11. I'm assuming because of Ryan Giggs, obviously for what he did in sport, not for what's happened
Yeah,
then after. So for me, it's come with me more into the domestic field. Obviously, I've changed that since, because people have chosen to have that number, and I've kind of gone to being the bigger man and said, well, after a period of time, I was a bit annoyed with not being able to keep my number I've always had. And I've gone down the route of wearing the double 3 at the end, 33. But in basketball, obviously, there's got a lot of great Scottie Pippen, Olajuwon, and things like that. So for me, it's like, oh, you've picked a good number now, because obviously those are good players. But coming back to you, Stuart, so if I don't go off too much on a tangent, you've worked closely with the RAF Benevolent Fund. How close is it for you specifically and your family, and what have they done for you in the aftermath of obviously a very traumatic experience for your family, of obviously losing both your legs in a conflict? What have they meant to you, and you specifically, and also to your family?
so I think when you're serving in the Air Force, that, well, me specifically anyway, I know that I didn't quite have to rely on the benevolent fund and what they could do for us and things like that. But it's only when you find yourself in these kind of situations that you kind of you're grateful for the work and the effort that they put in for you. And it's all well and good, me learning to walk again after obviously the injuries I sustained, and trying to get my life back on track that way. But you've obviously got your home life to deal with, things like that. So you've got to get your house back on track so that you can get back to living as normal as you can again. And you have a different way of life, and these guys at the RF Benevolent Fund are just they're there for you, like in the background. They're there for you to help you and get you back on track and get your life as best you can back to normal. And I just been fully appreciative since they helped me out, to try and give something back to them. And I think that with the experiences that I've got, not just from my sporting career. I think, but from my the injuries that I sustained and the path that my life has taken since being injured, to try and give something back to any future people that require the help, and hopefully I can help spread the word of how good the work that the Benevolent Fund does, and try and signpost people to their needs or their wants towards the Benevolent Fund. And if that helps just one person, at least it's done more than literally you can think of. So I think that it's just always going to be a great way to help them, but as well showcase the work that they've helped me, not only in my life, but obviously my sporting life and the family's life. So yeah.
I appreciate you sharing that, Stuart. What a lot of people won't know is obviously your wife was ex-military as well, and I found that interesting for myself because obviously, so you've got some context. My father is ex-US Air Force, and my mother's a retired NATO civilian, so I've grown up in that kind of environment. What was it like for your son having? Because I watched the video with you in the Benevolent Fund, and it gave me a little bit more of the backstory for how it was for the family. What was it like for the rest of the family, having obviously you and your wife being on active deployment?
I think it's pretty tough. Obviously, just having the one family member as an acting serviceman or woman is pretty tough. But to have both, makes it definitely takes its toll on the family. And I think you've got to make the most of every opportunity that you get to be at home and to spend time with them, because it's not a normal family upbringing. You try and make it as best as you can, but I don't really know many other jobs where you're away for at least one parent's away for 6 months of the year at a time, and you just need to try and make the best life as you can whilst you're at home. And I think obviously, despite the injuries I sustained with the Air Force, helping me out as much as they can, they kind of made, especially the Benevolent Fund, they helped make my transition and my life for the family as best they could. And it's obviously always going to be tough, but I think the more support that you can get through the Air Force and through the Irish Benevolent Fund is obviously going to be beneficial for your family in the way that you move forward.
This is going to be quite a difficult question for you to answer, Stuart. Do you think, obviously, you acquiring your disability? I'm not going to mince my words with that. At a stage when obviously Prince Harry has brought the Invictus to light, do you think it's like the perfect storm, whereas everything is kind of fallen into place, that you've had injury, you've done your rehab, and then obviously you've got an outlet to be able to focus on and kind of target to get something back, and to a certain extent have some sort of normality?
So yeah, I think it literally did come at the perfect time for me. Obviously, I was injured in 2013, and I just got into Headley Court, where all the service personnel go to kickstart their rehab and their recovery. And one of the big things for me whilst I was there 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time was obviously you do your physio, you learn to walk again, you get your body back on track. But sport for me was a great healer, and the way that you could go to the gym, not only do you get your body back to fitness and back to health as best you can, but I used it as a massive distraction from everything that had happened from me. And then when I came out of the gym one day and saw the posters for the Invictus Games, like I said, it came at the perfect time. It was a great opportunity for me to dip my toe in the water, should we say, and to see where the sport could take me. And I was just kind of lucky that it kind of snowballed into where we are today. But I think having that opportunity is one that I'm really glad that I took, and one that it helps me get to where I am today. But I think for a lot of servicemen and women that are injured or making their way to Headley Court or to Stamford Hall, where it is now, you've got to grasp these opportunities. And for me, I was a bit hesitant at the time about what I should do and whether or not I should move forward. But it just turns out that it was one of the best decisions that I ever made, to make that leap of faith into playing for the Invictus Games, and then using that as a springboard to my Paralympic journey with GBWR. So, yeah.
Did you ever think that you would go springboard from competing in the Invictus Games to obviously donning a GB vest and going to a Paralympics?
Originally, when I first got to the Invictus Games, it was more about just getting my body moving again and playing some kind of sport. It was only on, I think, on the day when we played rugby in London, that the more the games went on and we were going to win a few more games, that for me, my competitive edge and spirit kind of kicked in, and I thought, right, we've got to go ahead and win this now. And when we did win it, obviously I was over the moon and things like that. But I think afterwards we got chatted to a few of the coaching staff, and they were like quite heavily involved with GBWR, and they mentioned look, there's a different version of the sport, which is obviously the Paralympic version. Maybe you could classify and come across, and just quite luckily that I did. And I think the whole goal from me, even from that day onwards, was to at least try and get to a Paralympic Games. Again, a bit like the Invictus, I'd never kind of wanted to go there and just win the medal, but I think the longer that I was part of the squad and that I could feel the atmosphere and the belief within the squad that we were going to go and medal, and it just kind of ignited that fire in me to go ahead and to try and win it in Tokyo. So I was I had that fire inside me to try and win and to try and make it to the Paralympic Games. And obviously, when I'd been told that I'd made the squad, the next thing to move forward was to try and lift us all as a squad, from the coaching perspective, from the staff, from the athletes themselves, to have all be on the same page with the same belief to move forward and to try and win that medal over in Tokyo. So yeah.
A lot of people especially probably in Britain, I've seen the interviews there and after of you guys winning the medal and being interviewed on the last leg, which obviously some of that, I think each team had tried to up themselves, be it just to be for comedic value and things like that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna, for the ones that are in the UK, I'm gonna try and find that so people can go and watch, because I think that's the best bit of the last leg, is when it comes around every 4 years, is the Paralympics, because you get to see probably the unfiltered version of the athlete. Obviously, it's on a comedy program, but it's you guys letting off steam, and probably, would you say, in your wildest dreams, the gold medal was, I would say, not a long way off, but I think probably within the team, that was probably the aspiration, but things had to click into place, like a domino effect.
Yeah, massively. I think obviously we all had the belief that we wanted to go and win a medal, but it's all well and good having the belief. It's whether or not you truly believe it and you can move forward, and you've all got to be on the same page to be able to do it. And obviously, Tokyo, we were confident in ourselves, but with the pandemic and all the lockdowns and everything else, it's quite tough to train and to as a team sport anyway. How do you know when you're training in the garage at home, or you train out on the street pushing your chair? How do you know how you're performing compared to like other nations and how they're getting on? And we literally, you go in there blind, or only with the belief that you've done everything that you can, sometimes as individuals in a team sport, and with very limited team playing time, that you're going to go out there and win a medal. And we were still confident throughout the 17,000 Zoom phone calls and meetings that we had between the squad to go forward and to watch the video analysis and the strength and conditioning sessions and stuff like that. And I truly believe that the way that our ethos was, that the way that we held our hopes, that we knew we were going to medal, it's just we had to go out there and perform. And at the end of the day, the gold medal match is purely one game, and it could have swung either way. It's just who wants it more and who puts the game plan into action more. And just lucky for us, I think we had that belief, we had the desire that we were going to go and win, and we came away with the gold medal.
Well, I reshared with you the video from the Europeans, and you busting a gut to get back to. I'm assuming it was a French dude, because obviously later on in the video it shows the crowd very animated when they score a try. So, from a rule perspective for the audience, because obviously I know a little bit about rugby, and I was fortunate in my first Paralympics out in Beijing to go and watch the rugby in a very, it's probably as close as you're going to get to a pandemic games. It's very intimate and very small arena, and to be alongside the family members, which you guys obviously didn't have the fortune of having your friends and family there to watch. It was very electric atmosphere. So when you're trying to make a bust to gut to make a play defensively, what are the fine lines between obviously you getting the ball back and it being a turnover to you being maybe half a centimetre the other direction and they get a penalty?
So it's very tough. Obviously, like I said, it's very fine margins. I think sometimes you have to be careful you can try and grab the ball. Obviously, as much as what people see in rugby is like it's full contact, people are slashing each other in chairs, but you can't do person-to-person contact like normal able-bodied rugby. So if you're going to reach for the ball and the opposition put their arm in the way or the hand in the way and you touch part of them, then it's an immediate foul against yourself and they get to retain position or it's a turnover. So it's very tough, and you've got to be a lot of practice, a lot of training to be able to get it. And sometimes on the day you're not going to get those calls, and sometimes you are. And I think in the video that you're alluding to, I kind of knew that he'd got a bit of a head start on me, and I try and catch him. But one of my teammates on the day kind of flushed him to one side, and I kind of thought if I can push him enough towards his own player, if his own player doesn't get out of the way, he's going to end up hitting his own player and spinning himself out. And immediately, as soon as I hit him and he hit the floor, I looked at the referee and I was waiting for them to kind of call a decision against me. But I was like, well, I didn't kind of touch him in the dangerous area. He just hit his own player and fell on the floor. And when the referee gave the call that it was a turnover to us, obviously we was pretty happy and we was going to try and score the next try to take advantage of the turnover. So again, it's very fine lines, and it's just sometimes it's the what happens on the day as you as a player or what the referee sees the call as, and sometimes you have to roll with it and go however it rolls. Yeah.
So we rewind back to the days of you being in the Invictus Games. If I had to now make you choose, which is your favourite and why?
I think obviously there were some great opportunities to go away. Obviously I did Orlando, which was great for the family, and obviously it's in the States. And then you go to Toronto, and I really enjoyed Toronto because it was like a city games where instead of going out to various arenas here, there, and everywhere, you was going around Toronto City Centre, which was a pretty amazing place. But I think not just for being British, but I think the London Games being the very first ever one, and being at home games, and obviously the fact that we came away with the gold medal was pretty special. So I'm probably always going to say that the first ever games in 2014 in London is probably my favourite. It's where I kind of not only kick-started my career playing sport, but it's just one where I think everything clicks into place, a bit like Tokyo for us and GBWR, that we kind of knew what we had to do, and it just kind of kick-started me and wanted me to go forward in my career playing sport and where I could take it. So yeah,
I appreciate that, Stuart. We're gonna touch upon the funny story. You shared, you know where I'm probably going to go with this one now. You shared that obviously you've had the misfortune of having equipment go AWOL. Now you obviously getting into to destination, but your equipment not actually doing that. How frustrating is that? Because obviously that's your bread and butter. And the one I'm alluding to is obviously the most recent one when you've gone out to the US, and I'm going to obviously call them out. British Airways have managed to lose your chair. How frustrating is that for you?
So when I was in Tokyo, I got a message through the guys over in the States asking me if I'd like to come over and play, and I thought, what a great opportunity to go and test myself in the US and see how I could fare up against when I'm playing over there and to develop my game more. So I went over a couple of times. We played a couple of tournaments. We did really well. We won those, and we managed to qualify for the national tournament, where I think the top 8 teams in the US get to compete against one another for the title for the best team in the US, and we qualified for it. We were feeling really confident, and I played really well here and there, like out in the different tournaments, and so the whole season had basically come down to flying out to Chicago and to compete in this tournament against the other 7 best teams in the US. I've been given permission by GBWR to go out there and to actually develop my game and to improve my effectiveness as a leader and my performances on the court. And so everything was geared towards this whole tournament. I'd obviously flown from Manchester down to Heathrow and then out to Chicago. I remember landing in Chicago, it'd been a long flight. I had much sleep. I was pretty tired. My normal wheelchair came out. My wheel bag, for some reason, came out on the normal luggage carousel, all well and good, which I kind of thought was a bit strange because I'd put that into the oversized baggage. And then I went over to the oversized to wait for my wheelchair, my rugby wheelchair, to come out. I was there for about 2 hours. People kept coming over to me saying, "What am I waiting for?" I said, "Well, my rugby chair." And they said, "Is it not here?" And I said, "Well, I'm pretty sure you'd see it if it was, because it's a pretty big piece of metal." Eventually, nothing came through, so I had to go and obviously file a complaint. And they said, "Look, we'll get it to you very, very soon." Obviously, I think I got there on the Wednesday. The tournament was going to start on the Friday morning, so we had like a good another 24 hours for the chair to arrive. The team manager, she got on the phone to the airline and to try and speak to them, and the customer service was pretty poor, to be honest. That we were on the phone for like 3 hours with nobody picking up the phones. You were on hold and stuff like that, and still no response. And emails, messages on the social media and stuff like that, and nothing came through. So in the end, it left me no choice but to put a message or a post on social media to try and at least alert their attention, to try and get them to contact me, because we were getting nowhere and I had no way of getting in touch with where the chair was. So I put the post out, and literally within 5 minutes there was a reply saying, "Really sorry to hear about this. Can you DM us your problem?" So, and that kind of got the ball rolling. Straight away they were in my DMs on Twitter and Instagram or whatever, and saying, "Look, can we help you out?" and stuff like that. So I said, "Look, my chair's not made it. It's got to be somewhere in the system." And it turns out that it was still at Heathrow, I think. Overnight on Thursday night, when some of the other guys came in, they chatted to the staff at the airline at the airport, and they were given mixed messages. One of them said that it was still at Heathrow. Another one said it was either on its way to Chicago, and then somebody else said it was on its way to Miami, which was not great because I wasn't even in Miami. But again, I had no way of hurrying the system up, and so many messages back and forth trying to find out where it is or when it's going to come out. And it's getting more and more frustrating because obviously the whole season had built up to this whole tournament, and it wasn't just like a piece of luggage where you can just go out and buy a new pair of boxer shorts or a new t-shirt or replace your toothpaste and you can get on with your day. This is like a sports chair that what the whole season been lining up for, and I wanted to go and test myself. And here I was, the team going out, having to play the first couple of games on the Friday. I could do nothing because I had no chair. I just sit on the sidelines and give support, which is I'm not very good at. But yeah, and then still the Saturday, still nothing. And then I think on the Saturday evening, I received a DM saying that obviously I'd fallen asleep, but overnight they sent a message saying that the chair was on its way and it was going to be arriving in Chicago at 10 a.m. Now we had a game at 10:30 that morning, and I was like, that's going to be putting it fine to be able to get that from the airport to me in time. So I think it got there in the end by the placing game. So we had like 1 or 2 games left, and by then the tournament's nearly over. You know, I mean, we've got like you're playing for like 5th, 6th place, and then who knows whether or not with my chair we could have got any higher. But I was massively disappointed that I've not had the opportunity to go out there and play against the best players in the US or wherever else in the guys that have come across. But so disappointed. But it's not kind of put me off. It's just something that unfortunately it was as Paralympic or para athletes you have to kind of expect sometimes, and it's unacceptable. And I'm not quite sure how we can kind of get around this. And I think sometimes that the airlines have to look at things and think that they don't need to start treating sports, not just sports chairs, but disability chairs or whatever else as like just another piece of luggage. It needs to be, if at the end of the day it's your mode of transport or it's your piece of sporting equipment that you're using, and it's just very, very tough to try and come to terms with when airlines treat your piece of kit like this. And I don't know how we can move forward, but it's just something that at the moment we have to live with and try and move forward. You know?
Well, I think the only thing I can relate to that is probably my last year with GB rowing. My suitcase didn't arrive at the World Champs. But in comparison to your story, obviously you can do without kit and things like that for a couple of days. Obviously, being one of those leading sports. I think the only exception is World Champs. We're one team, the Olympic and Paralympic team. So it's a big organization and it's got a big push. So they're not very happy with the I think it was a Polish airline in the end. My bag never actually even left the airfield. And I guess the aircraft wasn't small enough for us. I think the only Paralympic team that was traveling out from the UK out to Poznan. And the French team obviously went via Warsaw, I believe, is where we flew into. And obviously, there's a lot of kit going into that one aircraft. So I think I wasn't the only one in the team that didn't end up with a suitcase, but obviously, as a team, they weren't very happy because it's like, well, we expect all the equipment to get there. Mine is not as severe as yours because it's okay. There's training kit. There might be a competition kit in there. It's not the end of the world because we've got enough of it to go around. I might have got it the next day. I think it ended up flying in that night. So I guess as an organization, you got a lot of push to kind of go. Well, I got. Whereas I think the French, it was days. So you're thinking, well, okay. Whereas with you, I agree with you because that's not as if it's a suitcase that's gone missing. I think the only other time it's happened, I think it's happened twice to me. That World Champs and another like minor competition, and I think to teammates when Terminal 5 opened. So you were playing Russian roulette to a certain extent because a lot of stuff went missing at the very beginning when Terminal 5 opened at Heathrow. So I didn't risk it that time. It's like, well, I don't need my suitcase. They can travel back on the back of the lorry, and I'll pick it up from Caversham where Rowan's based, and we'll go along with my business. I'm not gonna expect British Airways to bring this thing home because it's obviously headline news back then. I can't remember when it opened, but it was headline news that there was luggage. I think the squad member in particular, his never left Milan, his suitcase, and he had to wait 2 weeks for it. So it's okay when you're coming home from training camps and things like that. It's not the end of the world because you got clothes. But for you, obviously, for it not to even leave the British Isles, and that's a major competition that you've set your stall out for the whole season. Okay, it's not Europeans, Worlds, or the pinnacle. Obviously, ParalympicsGB would have a massive problem with if you're just one person's piece of equipment didn't turn up in, say, Paris or LA in the future, let alone Tokyo, Rio, Beijing. So they probably come hard on British Airways as, come on, you're the flagship carrier. But what you're talking about, Stuart, is obviously they drop the ball. Maybe every 4 years, we want to be head and shoulders above the rest and kind of go be the airline of the national team. But we're only talking, what was that, months after Tokyo?
Yeah. I remember once we had a few messages back and forth just saying that look, I explained the whole situation. I said, look, this is the whole season, the whole year's been building up to this one tournament, and look, this is what I need to play in. Where is my chair? And some of the replies were, look, can you not just go out and hire a chair? And I don't think they quite understood that how bespoke certain. Obviously, as each individual athlete's got his bespoke chair anyway. But for me, as a different limb length amputee, this chair is like ultra bespoke to me, and it only worked for me. So I couldn't just go out and borrow somebody else, even though I had to, and ended up hurting myself. I had to borrow somebody else's chair, but you can't usually do that because you need your own chair which works for you, and you're going to put yourself at risk of injury or further down the line. And it's just a bit of a sad situation to end with, really, after the whole season that I've gone through. So,
Well, that's almost like speaking to somebody, say in track and field, go out and buy a different different set of spikes. That's like breaking in some shoes. That's not doable at a high level of. That shows I'll say incompetence, the ignorance of the person that you're dealing with on social media to not have the foresight. It's like somebody doesn't have like a on switch, as in you're not having the foresight of who you're talking to, and the magnitude of just going out there and picking something off the shelf. I think from if we just said the disabled perspective, yes, at the very beginnings of your journey, you could go to the limb center here in the UK and get something what more resembles a tank than a wheelchair. But as you progress through that journey, it's bespoke. The chair is bespoke. The limbs are custom made. They're your. There's no equivalent in the able-bodied world to be able to kind of go, well, this is unique, except maybe say, the basketball players having to go out and buy size, 15 plus trainers.
yeah,
They're going to have to be custom, or hotels going to have extremely large beds and things like that. So I think it's very saddening, and it angers me that's you've had to resort to social media to get something resolved as simple as, okay, that's like, I don't know, the airline losing the person's javelin, or losing their pole vault, or set of skis, be it, I don't know, downhill or slalom. These are specific for the athlete. Without them, you can't compete.
yeah.
But it shows the power of social media, because
Oh, yeah.
It's in it, but it doesn't matter. It could be British Airways, it could be any company. They'll quickly want to make it in the DMs, so it's not in the public eye.
Yeah.
But the resulting factor on you is, do you have a sense of what if, a sense of regret of what could have been if you'd had the chair arrive at the original starting point when you'd arrived in Chicago?
Yeah, I think we didn't have the ambitions that we were going to go out there and win the whole tournament, but I just would have liked the opportunity to pit myself and the team against the other best teams in the US, and to have that taken away from us was obviously pretty saddening. But I think we saw the difference when I had to borrow, like I said, like somebody else's chair, and it just didn't work. And the performance of myself obviously hindered the performance of the rest of the team. And as soon as my chair did arrive, the whole, like, the mood was lifted, the performance of myself, the performance of the rest of the team, we were all lifted. We went on to win the last couple of games. So it just shows that when you have the right equipment and the right things that you need, that how well you can perform. And using the wrong equipment didn't help us at all, despite what other people had turned around and said, look, we can offer you this chair, we can let you use this. And with airlines saying, look, can you not hire this or use somebody else's, that it doesn't quite help. And I don't think we quite understood the fact that how needed my chair and my equipment was to enable not just me but the rest of the team to be able to play well enough.
But I think where they probably lose sight of that, Stuart, is, for whatever reason, it's not viewed as equal to everybody's sport. Whatever reason, we want to give as an excuse. I'm not going to give one. But in terms of trying to replace like for like, we're talking of high end sport. You wanted to test yourself versus the best that the US had to offer, and others who'd been invited across, to kind of see, well, how do I kind of put up against other people? How do I click with different people that I wouldn't normally have the opportunity to compete alongside? So it gives probably a greater bond from a sport perspective, because it wouldn't happen,
Mm.
especially at a continental world, because you'd be foes. It's not often that you would get that opportunity to compete with anybody else, especially at that. So it's probably it's probably very frustrating for you to think back of what could have been, and the what I get from speaking to you, especially, is, it's we're talking about high level sport at the end of the day. It should be looked at that, and for the airline to say, well, can't you go just out and hire a sports jet? It's like, well, it doesn't work like that.
Yeah.
It's thousands of pounds of equipment. Who's going to pay for that?
Mm. I mean, not only does it obviously impact your performance while you're playing and stuff like that, but it's also now people have asked, "Look, are you going to go back and play again?" And yeah, I'd love to go back and play again, but you're always going to have it in the back of your mind now. Am I going to get my chair at the other end? Am I going to get my rugby, my wheel bag and stuff like that? And we shouldn't be living in these times where you're worried about if your kit's going to get there. And yeah, I know mistakes happen and luggage gets lost and stuff like that. But like I said, it's like people's mobility, or it's people's high-end sports equipment, that there should be a tracking system or whatever, where we actually know where it is, or maybe even a specific area or something where kit and equipment like this is definitely going to come, and you can put it in and you know it's going to make it onto the aircraft and stuff like that. And you shouldn't be living in these times where you're worried, is your day chair, is your sports equipment even going to make it across wherever you're flying to and stuff like that. It's just, I think, a worry and a stress that not just obviously me as a sports person, but any person that uses a chair or just a disability aid should have to go through, just for the sake of flying and worry about what the airline can or can't do.
I think you raise a good point there. If we make it to the I almost said general public, to the greater disability community as a whole, as that's going to have an impact on somebody's holiday. That's going to have an impact on stress,
Yeah.
worry. You don't really want to be going on a holiday, as you've alluded to, because obviously Orlando for your family would have been a holiday. It would have been nice to leave. Well, you're not far away from me as we're talking, but as in the northeast of the UK, today is gloomy. I expect Orlando today is sunny. Obviously, anybody watching in Orlando can obviously let me know if that's not the case. But obviously, that's going to impact. It's an added bit of overthinking. I talked about it yesterday on Facebook Live, as people have got 101 other things to worry about, as somebody who is obviously your double amputee. I'm a single, be it limb loss, limb different, wheelchair user, cerebral palsy. You've got other external things to worry about at home. So the last thing you want to be doing is worrying about, will my aids turn up the other side for me to have a pleasant experience with the rest of my family. So it's not ideal. It is unacceptable, but they would probably say it's, I'm going to use a military term, collateral damage to a certain extent, as baggage is going to go missing. They can't, for whatever reason, well, they could probably track the lot because the suitcase has got a barcode on it. Your chair would have had a barcode on it. We live in an age now of technology. It probably, I think, relatively simple to be able to have some sort of app that you can kind of go, okay, my bag is still currently in Heathrow, and then you can have a constructive dialogue with customer services. What are you going to do about getting it from Heathrow with me being in Chicago, because I've got this tournament in X amount of hours. I need it to be able to compete. I know where it is. What are you going to do about it?
I
And
think
then
yeah,
that's something you could give to the rest of the community, because they go back as well. Okay, you ruined my holiday. or at least some portion of it, what are you going to do about it to rectify that?
Yeah, it's led me to obviously moving forward with my playing career, or even going on holiday or wherever, that now, because there was no idea of knowing where my chair was or what, and even speaking to customer services, they didn't have an idea of where it was. That obviously you're in not only limbo because you want the chair to get to you, but if nobody knows where it is, how can you even call up Manchester Airport, because it might not be there? How can you call up Heathrow? You can try and get through to them all, and it's pretty disappointing that I couldn't get through to any of them. But moving forward, it's led to me to look at like things like like the tracking devices. Like, you can think by the Apple tags or something like that that you can track in your phones. Maybe just strapping one of those to my day chair, my rugby chair, my wheel bag or whatever, so that at least for my own peace of mind, I know when I'm traveling now somewhere, if they turn around and say, "Oh, unfortunately, we couldn't load your rugby chair," at least I'll have the peace of mind of knowing, right, I can see on my phone it's definitely still in Heathrow or Manchester or wherever else. But at least that way I can say I know the right area to contact. I know who to try and hurry up to try and get the chair moving forward for that. But again, it's something that I've had to look into more to try and alleviate the stress at my end, rather than having to go on any journeys and stuff like that and just end up worrying where the actual luggage or any kind of aids are. So it's just tough to move forward with.
Yeah, but logistically, that shouldn't fall to you, though, should it? As the consumer, obviously, you come from a military organization that has a specific department that deals with logistics of, be it personnel, equipment, you name it. If that don't turn up, and somebody's gonna get a right bollocking.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's good to say, like, you coming from, maybe I'm a little bit afforded the luxury of, obviously in the military you get told to be somewhere at a certain time, you're there and stuff like that, and you expect kit and equipment to pitch up at a certain time, and more often than not it does. But I've now left that environment, and I'm now in the big wide world, and becoming a civilian, shall we say, and I'm having to come to terms with this ideas of kit, equipment, and or whatever else not being where I need them at the right time, and it's just obviously taking a bit of adjusting to get used to, and how I can now try and help that, make that even easier. And I know that, like I said about the tags that I'm putting on myself, but I think if the airlines or the travel company or whoever else is going to not be forthcoming with any ideas or any opportunities to try and alleviate the stress by having a tracking system for your kit and equipment, that this is the only option I can see going forward for now anyway, to try and help that with myself.
You're kind of in I won't say a limbo, but you're in that kind of in between bit, because sport is exactly like those. You need to be on time, you need to be at a certain place, you need to have the right gear, and we expect this. So I think I don't think, okay, I've long since retired, but I don't think it's that much to ask of an airline to maybe think outside the box. We're talking about, I was joking with Terminal 5, but the amount of money that was pumped into that building alone for the baggage stuff and all things, it obviously went wrong, but we're long past it being open, and be it that there is a system in place to, as that barcode I mentioned on your luggage, to go from point A to point B, point C. You expect it to be tracked of some sort, be it it's being tracked at when you get at the desk, the transfer point, and then when you pick up, and then obviously and vice versa, going back the other way. So the aspect that you're having to go above and beyond to purchase equipment that's not cheap, to be able to track it. Obviously you've got to do something, because then you've got something to go on. At least I know where it is, even if you don't. But it needs to be of utmost importance, because you're thinking, well, we're talking about, okay, high level sport, but that has a knock on effect on every aspect of a disabled person's life. Because if you're worrying about, as I mentioned before, are my crutches going to turn up? Are my wheels going to turn up? Am I going to just turn up with the frame? Yeah, you can go out and hire a wheelchair, but it's not yours. It's you're a grown man. I'm assuming you don't want to be pushed around by your son or your wife. Okay. There's an aspect of pride when that comes to and feeling potentially out of place because of having to rely on other people to help you out, whereas that wouldn't be the case before you'd have left. It becomes, I'm going to use somebody else's saying, what's the point of going away? As in, it's just an extra hassle, and I could be okay. I'm losing the gloomy weather for the sunshine, but I can't do things for me that I would be able to do at home. So, well, what's the point in traveling in the first place? It's not something. It's not a conversation we should be having in the 21st century.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, and I can only obviously on the way back from the nightmare trip. Obviously, when they lost my rugby chair, that they'd also misplaced my normal wheelchair on the return journey home. So, and I had a 7-hour stopover in at Heathrow, and obviously I'm flying up to Manchester to make my journey home a bit quicker. But I thought, and I even had a long, lengthy discussion at Chicago Airport on the way home. I said, look, when I land in Heathrow, I need my normal wheelchair back because I've got 7 hours. I can go and I can do some exploring, albeit around the airport, but you can get some lunch and relax a little and stuff like that. But I don't want to be pushed around by one of the airport assistance team and like be waited on hand and foot. I'm quite an independent person, so I want my day chair back and I want to be able to get around. And obviously, when you land and you get told that they can't find it and stuff like that, that you are being pushed around in a wheelchair that I can't push myself. I have to have somebody else push me, and it's just so much stress and unnecessary hardship that you don't need when things could be just a lot easier by, like I said, simple little introductions of barcodes or whatever else to make things a little bit easier.
Well, that's even worse when you put it that way. You didn't share that on social media.
Yeah,
That's worse. That's
yeah,
even
my whole
worse.
the whole trip by then I didn't have anything in me to get angry or to get agitated. I just wanted my normal chair back and wanted to try and be as independent as possible. And bear in mind, I had I think a 7 hour stop at Heathrow. That by the time I eventually got my normal day chair back, I only had I think 2.5 hours left of that 7 hours. So it took that long, and it was just a nightmare trip from start to finish. And it's just such a tough situation and time to be a wheelchair user, and one obviously left a bit of a sour taste in the mouth from what should have been one of the biggest opportunities to play at club level anyway. The sport that I love playing, and I think it's not really put me off wanting to continue playing abroad and stuff like that. But I think it's definitely food for thought every next time that you get asked the opportunity to go away, and something to always bear in mind.
Yeah, but that's a dialogue you really don't want to be having with yourself. As in, this is what I want to do, and obviously being put in a position of, well, should I or shouldn't I go, or will this happen again? What worse could you're getting into very dangerous waters from a belief perspective, and it's going to have it possibly in some individual cases, it's going to have a knock-on effect on their performance.
Oh, massively, yeah. I mean, we've done loads of work even before Tokyo on the mental aspect of our individual games, and it's all well and good you're going away and working on your fitness and your strength and going to the gym and your conditioning and stuff like that. But for me, the mental side of my game was what was probably the hardest thing that I'd ever had to work on, and a lot of it was based on how you bounce back from certain situations while you're on court, and that was hard enough to deal with, let alone having all these external pressures and external stresses from losing your day chair, losing your rugby chair. You kind of don't need that. You've got enough to kind of deal with as an athlete, let alone everything else that could go on in the background. So it's just, again, something you could do without, really.
Well, I think we've alluded to this a little bit. We go to Paralympics, it's almost all of those things are taken care of.
Yep.
Logistic wise, you don't have to do anything. It's turn up to the airport, drop off your bag, get the other side, wherever country that might be it Tokyo, be it Japan, Brazil, Rio. Obviously, London's weird, but as a home games, Beijing, pretty much you don't see your bag until you're in the accommodation block, and it's taken care of. I'm assuming the Chinese and the Japanese are probably very similar in terms of meticulous with every aspect of that thing. But that should be the same thing all the time. It should be okay.
Yeah.
We in Britain we've got British Air, we've got Virgin. They should be kind of trying to up one and better themselves. So okay, we want to be the best because then the governing bodies are going to go travel with us, and that's the prestige
Yeah.
of okay. British Airways is not a public company anymore, and it hasn't been for 40 odd years. But you're using the platform of if I use coming home from Beijing, of riding on the 747 coming back from China, gold nose. That's prestigious for them, and obviously it's very. Uh, it's hard to put into words to be able to what it's like as an experience as an athlete coming home to it. But there's a sense of pride for probably Heathrow, for the British Airways crew, staff, that hey, we're gonna congratulate our athletes for a job well done. But that should be the standard across the board of any time that we have an athlete come on board. I'm not saying they're any better than the rest of anybody that's flying on that particular aircraft. I'm not saying that, but to kind of go, this is the standard that we set. Anytime they go away at Olympics or Paralympics, this is the standard that they should expect. And I would say every consumer should expect every time that they fly on that aircraft. But am I thinking of an age of bygone era? Probably. But for you to have to resort to social media, to use a modern tool to just find the whereabouts of where your equipment is, it is pretty bad, because ultimately you've done something that no British team has ever done before. Okay, I'm singling you out, Stuart, because you're in front of me, but your whole team has done something that the sport has never done within wheelchair rugby. You're pretty much household names within the rugby community for sure. In terms of what you've done, is doesn't matter that you're disabled or not. What you've done is very much to be applauded. So it's not like you probably could use MBE wherever you wanted to if you had that kind of ego, but in terms of you don't get that for nothing. It's not okay. Maybe a little bit easier than it used to be, but it is very hard to get an MBE and on the higher. I don't have one. I've gone to more games than you, but obviously, it doesn't bother me. But in terms of, it's not as if you're not an unrecognized person. You could probably anybody watching this, listening to it, put your name in, you're gonna come up in a Google search. So it's not as if the or any airline can't do their due diligence to kind of go, okay, it's not a case of Stuart just going out to any sports store and getting a wheelchair. It's not as easy as that. This vehicle that he's using is a part of him. That's almost like you getting on an aircraft and you don't turn up.
Yeah, it's I think even just let's just say the way that their kind of attitude towards look, a chair's gone missing or we've misplaced it or whatever else. It's not just me as an athlete and my sporting equipment. But if a normal person who uses a wheelchair or a disability aid goes on holiday or whatever else, and their kit and equipment goes missing, it's having a massive impact on their holidays or whatever else, and it just needs to be looked at more, because I know sometimes it's been banged on about for a long time about the attitude and things like that and the way that they treat you, but it's just something that needs to be done, and I don't know where we can kind of move forward to enable this to be more prominent, more or less of a like a minority issue. It's obviously people's mobility aids, and they need them to get around. And I said not just my sporting stuff, but people's normal wheelchairs. It should be held in the same regard as my sporting kit and equipment, because they need it to get about their normal life, and as much as I need to play sport. But it's just something that needs to be done. But I just don't quite know where or how this is ever going to improve, because obviously I've had stuff go missing before. I've had stuff that's been misplaced, and I understand the stresses that it puts you through and stuff like that. And I've not seen any improvement or any ways to make it better than it was previously over the last couple of years. So it's just something again that needs to be looked at and to hopefully improve with.
Well, I think it's looking at it maybe that it's these pieces of equipment are held in a higher regard than maybe somebody's I'm going to piss somebody off saying this, but in terms of somebody's suitcase, that the priority should be the wheelchair maybe versus the suitcase, as and you shouldn't be for tit for tat, as it weighs a lot less than a suitcase. But that's going to irritate me. They irritate somebody if I said, oh, well, somebody's wheelchair turns up and your suitcase is still somewhere. You're not going to be very happy. But for that person, their whole mobility is affected by not having that aid, and it's having a knock-on effect on their mood, their esteem of it's going to have a knock-on effect. Okay, so we as athletes are probably in a little bit of advantage because we can resort to resilience to a certain extent of, okay, it's unpleasant, it's not the end of the world, I eventually will get it, it's a bit frustrating. But for somebody else that maybe be not had acquired these mental skills or been accustomed to it, it's going to be there and doing. So we're coming to the end of the show, and I want to end on a more lighter note. So I like to ask this of all my guests, Stuart, that come on. If you got to sit down with any athlete, dead or alive for that matter, who would that be and why?
What a question. I think no, this might be a bit I wouldn't even say controversial, but I think the person that I look up to, maybe for his outspokenness off the pitch, but the way that he carried himself on the pitch always made me admire him. Was I'm not a Manchester United fan, by the way. Was Roy Keane. I love the way that he played the sport. He obviously played with his heart on his sleeve. He led by example. He wanted other players to follow him in the way that he played, even on the training pitch and stuff like that. And now, if you look at him when he's on as a pundit, as a commentator, he doesn't hold back, and you can imagine him as a player, and that's kind of the attitude that he would have. And I'd just love to kind of pick his brains. And I know that each individual person is like different and things like that, but if he was my captain and my leader, I'd definitely be looking up to him and wanting to impress him and to be on his side, etc., and follow him into any game or into any situation.
I'm intrigued now. What team do you support?
So I'm a Bolton Wanderers fan, which is obviously not great at the moment with our current plight. But yeah, I've obviously always grown up with when United were on Wednesday nights in the Champions League and Keane smashing in the goals against Juventus away and things like that. So it's been part of my growing up, and seeing him play at the top level for however many years was obviously quite inspirational.
And my final question before we sign off is, if you had to summarize what we've been speaking about today into one sentence for people to take away, what would that be?
Ooh, what a question. I think the majority of the conversation has been about my kit going missing. So let's just say that hopefully improvements can be made to enable not only athletes but people with disabilities to go about their lives on holiday, on trips, etc. like that, with a little more ease than currently they are at the moment. So yeah.
So once again, Stuart, thanks again for coming on the it shows it's live. I made a mistake. Thanks again, Stuart, for coming on the Mindset Athlete podcast.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
Must be my pleasure.